Keeping up the spirit of our mission of supercharging progress with the best of technology and the best of people, this conversation series focuses on the importance of diversity and inclusion, a core value to HCLTech and the one that truly lets our people shine as their unique best. And I'm honored to introduce you to this incredible inspirational leader who's our guest of honor today. With more than 20 years in orchestrating impactful tech, digital, and cultural transformations, she has advised corporate boards, served many customer advisory boards, and multiple nonprofits. Currently, as the Vice President and Chief Information Officer for Johnson Controls, she is leading the digital transformation strategy and journey for the company while actively advocating and leading her personal commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have with us Diane Schwarz. Hi, Diane. Welcome to HCLTech. And so nice to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Diane, you've been in tech industry for long, and it's like more than 20 years of leading the technology and cultural transformations. Overall, the world statistic is still not that great when it comes to women in tech boards. How's your journey been so far?
I am really excited about the future in terms of our representation. If you just look at female CIOs, maybe 5 years ago at the Fortune 500 level, there were 17% less. Now it's north of 20%. So call it 22% on average, which means we are making a meaningful increase in our representation at the leadership level. We are also making a meaningful increase on sitting on boards of companies. So we will get there. It's been a long journey, but we are changing the fabric and the face of technology one person at a time.
As you build your career in tech, how women and girls are still dropping out of STEM and tech courses pretty early, like maybe sometimes even in high school, forget about colleges. So how do we go to them early on in their career and encourage and advise them to build really strong future, not just a career, but really a future in tech and beyond?
So support of STEM programs is so important. Some studies have shown that by second grade, girls can start to self-remove from tech industries or math and science. And by the time they get to middle school, they start to have some of those societal pressures to self-remove. So anything that we can do to go to the elementary schools to support the STEM programs, to find programs like Girls Who Code or any other boot camps, and for us to show it's cool to be a geek.
I think the perception around the geek word is definitely changing. How has male allyship helped or will help further? Are you joining the Femme Inspiration sessions or International Women Month panel, or is it only for women to lead? Diane, maybe you could start, and I'm very interested in learning some point of views from the audience as well.
Yeah, let me just talk about mentorship overall. That you never have just one mentor.
Yeah.
You may be my mentor on a career journey. You may be my mentor in the kitchen because I'm terrible there. You may be my mentorship on reverse mentoring. What are the newer technologies that I can learn from you? You may be my mentor on board readiness and executive presence. So it's not about gender or ethnicity, but what are the skills or talents that you can add to me? And likewise, what are the skills and talents that I need to add to you? So we shouldn't ever look only at one gender for our mentors, but look at a whole spectrum of everyone in our lives and what mentorship that they can bring. And should men be allies and advocates of us? Yes. Should we be allies and advocates for men? Yes. we are all humans and need to support each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to create an ecosystem, like it's whole network. It's not just one buddy or one mentor, but what you learn from different individuals that shapes your personality, your career. So that's a great insight, Diane. How important is change management and to really inspire people, and as we say, human beings, irrespective of their backgrounds, their ethnicity, their genders. Any example that you would like to share with our audience, how you go about it? What are some proven strategies and how to make it effective on a day-to-day basis?
So the communications person who supports me at Johnson Controls counsels me that for any message, understand my audience. What do I want them to know, feel, and do? So if I'm presenting to the board of directors, I have to think about that. If I'm presenting to the CEO, I have to think about that. If I am talking to a group like this, what do I want you to know? Diversity is important and don't feel intimidated by it. How do I want you to feel? Inspired that you can make a difference. What do I want you to do? Go and sponsor somebody or be an ally. Whatever it is, I'm just using that as an example. But that know, feel, do is so powerful. So when you think about it in terms of an initiative that you are working on, if you're giving a presentation at a staff meeting, if you're advocating for a promotion with your boss, always think about what do I want them to know, feel, and do? Change management will much more naturally happen.
I mean, there are statistics that show that women are sometimes more talented, but they don't speak of their talent as much. They sometimes need a little bit more push to be confident in negotiations. There are a lot of biases, which has now, brought this unconscious thing in women themselves. Forget about others, having a perception of them. Have you seen that in your team members, and how do you encourage them to just open up and, remove these barriers? Like, is it easy? Is it changing?
So I'll talk on a couple of these. One, we aren't always great at marketing ourselves. But think about marketing your team. If you're uncomfortable talking about your personal success, can you change the message just a bit and talk about the great things that your team is doing? Even if you're not a manager, what are you working on with your team? And you may say, oh, but the person that I'm going to talk to or write an article for on our portal, they may not know or care. Well, think about how can they benefit from it? Did you roll out new features? Could someone be excited to learn about how they might be using what you're rolling out, or new tools or new technology that you're experiencing? Just to use an example. But if you think of yourself as an advocate for your team, you are there. You are becoming the voice and the advocate for that, which rolls back on you and your brand. So it can be a way to bring more of yourself to the spotlight in a way that you may be more comfortable because you're sharing it with your teams. Some
people could be naturally introvert. And I'm not here, maybe it's not related to gender, but any person can have a different personality. How important it is in corporate life, and how organizations are now embracing through various employee resource groups these different personalities, backgrounds. Some people are conservative, some people are introverts, some are socially, like as we come back from the world of COVID, not everybody is comfortable working out of office every day, 9 to 6. Some people have, become more comfortable in the virtual environment just because of personality. So how do we embrace all these different attitudes and still make them stand out and still have that winning attitude and ability to collaborate?
So I recognize that it can be more difficult for introverts to be in a crowd. Yeah. But I do think that technology has made it easier for introverts to engage. In this kind of forum, how many of you are in chat and are being vocal in chat, but you're an introvert. So it allows you to put your voice out there and to connect with others and find like-minded folks, find your community engaged in that way. So I absolutely encourage involvement in finding your business resource groups, using chat, using the tools to express your voice.
And how do you really unlock, like if you lead large teams, and even if you're not, like you could be in an individual contributor role, but how do you collaborate, make others feel comfortable, like I said, make room for others, but then really unlock the potential through true collaboration that is not possible if everyone is not their authentic self.
Yeah. So, Joe, we've all heard the basics of teaming, the forming, storming, norming, performing.
Yes.
Each of us play a role when we're forming new teams, a new boss, a new department, a new project. There's new somethings that happen all the time. And even though we may not be the leader of that, we can still help with some of that to unlock the voices. When there is a discussion, somebody is dominating the conversation. Raise your hand in your online forum of choice. Say, I would really like to hear from those team members who haven't spoken. And you may not be the one who is facilitating the session, but that doesn't mean that you can't chime in and help to reset the tone to ask for all of the others. Or there's another, you do have something to say, you raise your hand, you state your voice, and then you say, but I'd really like to hear from my colleague, Himanshu. What do you have to say about that? So just a couple of simple techniques that each of us can use to help unlock the voices in the team. And then the more that we demonstrate those techniques in meetings, others figure it out. They'll copy you. That's a good thing. And you set that example. And then it's really how those teams go from storming to performing. So I really challenge each of you to think about what can you do in your role, even if you are not a leader or a project manager or a sponsor. How can you use your voice to unlock others' voices in the room?
So that brings us to the, we need to focus on culture. It's like, it's not overnight that cultures change, and you've led cultural transformations. But what other parts of culture do you think are important to encourage more diversity, inclusion, and any other example that you would give to people to truly unlock and probably lead that change management?
I think listening is a key skill. Certainly all leaders should be listening more than they are speaking, because you and I are the ones on stage. But to have those sessions with teams to really understand what is on their mind and what does that tell us about the organization. So whether it's in a small group or whether it's a survey or if it's in one-on-ones or if it's in social situations, we as leaders need to be vulnerable and take what we learn in those listening sessions to really think about how the organization needs to change, if it needs to, what we need to do differently. And humility, I think, is another aspect. As well, all individuals need humility, but certainly as leaders, we need that too. And I learned from one of my great mentors that humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking more of others. And I think that goes to the diversity of thought and really honoring and respecting what others bring. If I have the humility to realize I'm not the smartest person in the room, but you bring something and you bring something, you bring something. So it's the listening and humility and vulnerability is really what I think leaders need to demonstrate and then live authentically to unlock that culture, because it allows other voices to amplify so that it's not our voice that's drowning everyone else out.
Yeah, that's a great insight. How I was reading an article that sometimes we think the person who participates most, and it's almost like a classroom participation, right? Even students are taught the more you ask your teacher, the more scores you get. But it's not true. You need to listen, observe, absorb, and then probably ask. There was a session, Diane, I was leading, and some leaders were a little bit apprehensive whether we will get questions today or not. And one person starts, the other follows. It's just that one lead. And how do we encourage candid feedback? Not just positive questions. Like sometimes we are open to even listening to criticism and constructive feedback. So listening is very important. But in your career, was there a mentor who really listened and sort of it was most impactful, if I could ask, in your career?
It's hard to call out anyone, but there were a couple of impactful mentors. One was when I made the change from non-IT departments to IT departments. So he was my manager and my supervisor. He said, next time you change jobs, you should just move into IT. I was leading IT programs, but I was leading them again outside of IT. Just go in and do it. Now that was a very humbling experience because I thought I knew it all back in the day. And then when I had my first true IT leadership role, I was responsible for a data center, a telephone switch, exchange servers. Well, that was a lot harder than I thought it was. So that was a lesson in humility. But another couple of mentors who were really impactful on me, they were women. And by demonstrating how they lived their lives authentically, taught me it was okay for me to do so. So one, she was a partner at the consulting firm that I worked for. She was a mother. Husband also worked. And when she had her youngest child, she brought it to a partners meeting so that she could feed her child during breaks. Now, it's maybe more common in some cultures or in today. Back then, it wasn't to be so visible that, yes, I'm going to bring my child to this event so that I can go and nurse them appropriately. And I thought, wow, is that bold? And another woman that I worked for, she didn't have children, didn't want to have children, and she loved to sing and perform. She was fabulous at her day job, but she was also a rock star on the weekend performing on stage and loved it and didn't hide that as well. So by these women living their authentic lives unapologetically and being really successful professionals helped inspire me that I could do the same.
What a great insight. And I also see, you saw the president of New Zealand, there's so many women leaders, even in other spheres outside technology, be it political science or, economists, who've always come under criticism to show their personal passion or even partying outside. So this is something we need to embrace, we are all human beings and we will nurse our child. We also have biological clock that's ticking at the same time as our career. And what do you see, Diane, as your biggest opportunity or advice for JCI or for HCLTech employees and women leaders and almost everyone around in the room? What would your advice be? How do you shape? How do you mentor? How do you include more backgrounds in your teams and really be the steward of change management?
Find a way to amplify your voice wherever your voice is. I'll just give you an example in my daily life. Might be more difficult for you to apply, but think about it. So George Oliver, the CEO of Johnson Controls, has been very visibly changing the diversity of his direct reports. So whenever someone retires, moves on to a new role, he is changing very visibly the fabric of his leadership team. So for me, in a situation like this, to praise George and say, attaboy, you are doing a great job. For me to use that as an example when I meet with other leaders to say, look what he's doing. There's no excuses. He's driving the profitability of our company and very intentionally doing it by increasing his diversity. So that's just an example where I can use my voice in a very intentional way in a setting to show this is how it should be done. You just have to find the examples that are relevant in your daily life to also amplify those messages.
Diane, that's awesome, and that also speaks of your background in so many diverse. Like you've done technology, you've studied mechanical engineering. You said you were in non-IT background, and then you switched to technology. Now being like at the highest position as the CIO of JCI, you also focus on DEI, which is your personal passion. But then you've also served nonprofits, and there is something. How do I give back? That empowerment is so important to so many who are in underserved communities. Talk more about your association with technology-related nonprofits and the work you're doing, and any advice for others to get involved.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak about that. And I do believe that to those who much is given, much is expected. Yeah. And I give of time, talent, and treasure because not only do I feel I'm obligated to, but because I believe passionately in giving back to those less fortunate. So one that I have been involved with for much time is Empower. And Empower provides pathways to wealth through technology for underserved youth, for women of color, and veterans. I started when I was at Textron, and we had a defense-based business unit. So thus the veterans and the technology. So it was good for work. It was good for the community. But we provide tech training to those underserved communities and help them find great jobs that turn into great careers. So, and we are now on a pathway to change the lives of 50,000 individuals through that organization. So that's been amazing to help them through the transformation. The other organization that I'm involved with, T200, this is the top women CIOs, but it can also be Chief Information Security Officers, Chief Technology Officers, so CXOs, top owners of the tech stack across the world. And we've realized we're the most powerful women in tech, and we can change the lives of others. So we now have an organization called Lift to lift others up. You started the conversation about how we really changed the numbers of women in tech and women in leadership. I probably should have led with T200.org because we are passionate that we are going to do everything we can to pull, lift, advocate other women and allow them to have great careers in the future. So I was one of the founding members of that organization, and I'm now on the board for T200. And we're going to change the world eventually in terms of the face of technology to have more women at the table.
That is so inspirational, Diane. Diane, you said you can find your mentor anywhere. I would say I have just found it here in this chair.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Lovely.
much. Thank you.
Lovely.
And no doubt she's the super finalist with Dallas CIO of the Year. And we look forward to having many, many more conversations with you, Diane. And lovely to host you today.
Thank you so much.